Hey guys, Technomentary here with the video for you guys. In today's video, we're going to be reviewing the iPhone SE 2nd edition versus the iPhone 7 Plus in a head-to-head comparison where you take a look at the hardware, the software, and overall performance of these two phones in 2021 running iOS 14 to see which one is the better option or whether you should upgrade from the iPhone 7 Plus to the iPhone SE 2020 edition. Everything, all that you need to know, it's going to be broken down in this video. But before we go ahead and get started, if you guys are new to our channel, we do a lot of tech news, reviews, and giveaways. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, if you guys are in the market for one of these phenomenal devices or looking to upgrade to one of the newer iPhones at a discounted price, make sure you guys check out the link in the description section. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the video for you guys today. First thing to note is the iPhone 7 Plus as we have here. So iPhone 7 Plus here was released back in 2016 around the annual Apple release time for its flagship around that September-October time period. So it's been over close to almost 5 years since the iPhone 7 Plus was released, where the iPhone SE was actually released last year in 2020 in April, which is a little bit surprising from Apple because it wasn't during its annual release time period. The iPhone SE was released 6 months after the iPhone 11 lineup, as we saw there. So the iPhone SE here was released in April, so it kind of came shocking. And the other shocking factor of the iPhone SE 2020 edition was that it came at a really discounted price compared to what Apple started to do with the 10 lineup, starting at almost $1,000 versus the iPhone SE, which started at $399. And when Apple released the SE, if you remember, it claimed that it has the fastest chip on any smart devices out there for smartphones. So that's the claim that Apple has made. And let's go ahead and start looking at the body of these two phones. As you'll notice, between these two phones, they have slightly different size and build and the material utilized on these two phones. The iPhone SE here uses aerospace grade aluminum with stainless steel body, where the iPhone 7 Plus has an aluminum body to it. And the noticeable difference here is that the back on the SE is a glass versus the aluminum on the iPhone 7 Plus, and that glass lets it do wireless charging, which is not possible on the iPhone 7 Plus. Of course, the other noticeable difference you'll notice right off the bat here is the camera. The SE has a single 12 megapixel camera, where the iPhone 7 Plus has a dual 12 megapixel camera. So of course there's that big difference. And one thing talking about the big difference between these two phones is that the iPhone 7 Plus of course has an iPhone smaller version, which is the iPhone 7. Unlike the iPhone SE, which would be just only one size, you are able to just buy the SE in the 4.7-inch one, which compares more closely to the iPhone 7. So if you're really comparing these two phones, you're more likely going to compare the 7 versus the iPhone SE here, because they're the same size if you're looking at it. But we're comparing these to show you guys the breakdown of everything you need to know. Also, the iPhone SE, it is rumored that the iPhone SE 2020 edition might have a Plus version of it. Although Apple hasn't quite made any official announcement, there's been a lot of rumors going around of that. And you'll see between these two phones the size difference just by looking at it. If you place it side by side, the Plus is just a bigger body to it. And how big, you might ask? Well, when you talk about the display size, we'll talk a little bit more in that area, because the iPhone SE here is a 4.7 display versus the iPhone 7 Plus, which has a 5.5 display. So huge comparison in terms of the display of these two phones that you'll notice. The other thing to mention about these two phones is that, as you'll notice, if we take a look at it, they're slightly different weight. The iPhone SE here, just a little over 5.5 ounce, where the iPhone 7 Plus little over 6 ounce. So the 7 with the bigger body weighs a little bit more. So if you're looking for a phone to weigh lighter, the SE is definitely lighter in that aspect. And let's talk about the front display of these two phones, which is really important. You'll notice both of the phones does have home button, the top notch. The iPhone SE was surprised when Apple started with with the iPhone 10 lineup and removed the home button. The 7 brought that nostalgia, that legacy home button, if you will. A lot of fans really like that home button. So if you're a person that wants to get a newer phone but don't want to stick with the device that's old, like the iPhone 7 Plus lineup, and still feel that the home button does have a lot of benefit, probably would get the SE because of that home button that it brings in. You'll notice on these two phones is the display here. Of course, we mentioned the display comparison because of the size are going to be vastly different. And the other difference between these two phones display, we mentioned this iPhone SE with the 4.7 versus a 5.5. Both of them does have LCD with IPS technology. They're not OLED between these two devices. The OLED one started the iPhone 10 lineup, 11, and the 12 lineup, where they really jack up the price for them. Another interestingly different between these two phones, its resolution here. The iPhone SE here has a 1334 by 750 pixel at 426 ppi, where the iPhone 7 Plus, because of that bigger display, has a 1920 by 1080 pixel at 401 ppi resolution to it. And talking about resolution, another really slight noticeable difference between these two phones are the contrast ratio. The iPhone SE here brings in 1400 to 1 thanks to that true tone display that it has, where the iPhone 7 Plus has a 1300 to 1, so 100 to 1 ratio difference between it. Not really noticeable, but that true tone does allow the iPhone SE to have a slight advantage of it. And the other noticeable difference between these two phones are the haptic touch on the iPhone SE versus the 3D touch to the iPhone 7 Plus that you'll notice. Talking about other aspect about these two phones that you probably notice is that the capacity that you can get these devices in. Both of the phones have varying slightly different base model configuration. The iPhone SE here at the base model comes with your 64 gigs, so it's a slight bump up. Then the iPhone 7 Plus, which starts at around 32 gig, and that's where the price comes in, the $399 for the iPhone SE versus if you're buying the 7 Plus new back in 2016, you paid almost $649. So as you can see, between these devices, you paid a lot more. Of course, both of the phones do have a max capacity of 256 gigs, so not a lot of difference between the max capacity that you get out of both of these devices. They're going to be about the same. And talking about hardware, what kind of chip that both of these two phones have? Well, they have slightly different chip because of the generation differences. iPhone 7 Plus has A10 Fusion chip, where the iPhone SE, as we mentioned, Apple bragged that it had the fastest smart chip at the time of the release. It has an A13 Bionic chip, close to the chip that is being utilized on the iPhone 12 lineup currently. So as you can see, the iPhone SE here does definitely bring in a lot of power to your phone. And talking about power, the other aspect we want to talk about is the battery life. So what kind of battery life can you expect out of these two phones? Well, they actually have different size battery. The iPhone SE here has around 1800 mAh versus the iPhone 7 Plus, which has a 29 mAh battery. So such a big difference in battery size, but does that really make a difference? Well, if you talk about battery life, one thing you want to talk about is the video playback. So between these two devices, the iPhone SE gets about 13 hours video playback, where the iPhone 7 Plus gives you 14 hours. So only 1 hour difference, although as you can see, there's almost close to 1000 mAh difference between that. And you might ask, why is that? Well, because with the bigger body and the bigger display, it takes up a lot more power to run this phone. So hence why we don't see much difference, and they're about the same when you do a video playback on these. And talk about the hardware, the last piece we want to talk about is the water resistivity. Both of the phones are water resistant. They're able to be underwater for about 1 meter for up to 30 minutes. But one thing to note, when these phones are taken underwater, because the iPhone SE has sort of the front and back being all glass, if there's a crack or any sort of nick or anything that broken, it can easily get water into it. Versus the iPhone 7 Plus, because of that, the aluminum body, you're not going to crack the back, maybe dent, it won't affect that. But the front glass, if on either of the phones are cracked, that water resistivity is going to be compromised. And let's talk about camera. One of the fun fact, interesting thing about the camera is that both of these phones have very different camera, as we saw, and camera is the area we really have to talk about when you talk about these two phones, because of their vast difference in the camera that they have. We know noticeably between these, it's a 1 versus 2 comparison, so you're going to notice different setting differences. But because that 1 to 2 camera is that the iPhone 7 Plus does give you that optical zoom of 2 times, where the iPhone SE here has a digital zoom of 5 times. So as you can see here, there's the digital zoom and you have the optical zoom. So that's the one varying difference between these two phones when you look at the camera difference. The other thing you'll notice between these two cameras is the portrait mode. You'll see on the iPhone SE here, we have only, on the iPhone SE, we have quite a few options for the portrait mode. Where the iPhone 7 Plus, it's the first time Apple introduced the portrait mode, and that's why it's only just one setting. You're not getting much out of your portrait mode. So if you're really looking for a phone to do a lot of photography, you're probably going to go with the iPhone SE. And along with the portrait mode, let's talk about the video, or sort of the video capacity of both of these two phones. So they do record some pretty phenomenal video between these two devices, but there is difference between the device video capability of it. The iPhone SE here starts from 720 all the way to 4K at 60 frames per second. Unfortunately, the iPhone 7 Plus only goes at 4K, but you're able to do 5 frames per second, which is slightly gives you a little bit advantage over the iPhone SE here, which has just a better camera, although that dual camera does allow it to do optical zoom. So as you can see, both of the cameras are still great cameras, but the SE here does definitely beat the iPhone 7 Plus when it comes to camera. And finally, let's talk about the software between these two devices. As you notice, between both of these devices, they are running iOS 14, and both are supported on iOS 14, which is a good thing between these two devices. But one thing we're going to note is between these two devices, they run optimally on iOS 14, is that the iPhone 7 Plus here might have only one more major update that it will get. We'll probably see iOS 15. We're not even sure if we do, because Apple usually stops the update around the 4 to 5 year mark for their iPhones. And when you stop getting any more of the updates, you start getting your apps starts to slow down a little bit. Some apps require that you have the latest iOS to run most effectively, and that's something you'll have to worry about. The iPhone SE, on the other hand, because it was released in 2020, still has another 3 to 4 years of major update it will get, because it's recent phone. So you'll expect the iPhone SE here to get a lot more out of it. Even the iPhone SE, the first edition, which was released around 2016, around the time frame of the iPhone 7 Plus, has iOS 14 right now supported. Probably won't get iOS 15, but it is supported. So you expect similar sort of with the iPhone SE here, going up to maybe 2024, supported with the updates, which is going to be phenomenal for these two phones. Of course, both of these phones does a phenomenal job, whether you're using it for social media or entertainment, or you're watching videos. Of course, watching videos on the 7 Plus is slightly better because of that bigger display, gets you more like tablet-like feeling. But nonetheless, both of the phones are phenomenal for your productivity tool, your shopping, your finance, games as well. The gaming-wise, we will say one thing is, whenever you're playing games like Temple Run and such, are pretty much equivalent in terms of their performance. But once you start getting into heavy graphic games like PUBG and Fortnite and games that are meant to play on the console, because of that, a 13 Bionic chip and higher CPU to this iPhone SE does a phenomenal job, and we don't see the phone heating up. With the iPhone 7 Plus does have that issue. If you're looking for to game a lot, probably want to go with the SE. And let's finally conclude between these two phones. Why might you get the iPhone 7 Plus first? Let's talk about a couple things. The iPhone 7 Plus does have a bigger battery to it, and it's about a 1.59 more battery power to it. The other thing we want to talk about is because of that 5.5 display, you get about 13% higher pixel density resolution to it, and that allows it to really give that more of a visual eyes display that's just slightly better and enhanced. Of course, that bigger display is about 17% bigger display. It does have two dual lens camera, allows you to do that 2 times that optical zoom, which is impossible. You get the digital zoom on the iPhone SE here. And let's talk about why you probably want to get the iPhone SE here. If you're looking to get the iPhone SE, there's a couple things you're going to notice. It's that it has a faster CPU. How faster, you might ask? It has a 1.84 faster CPU. It has 2 times the better video recording quality because of that slightly enhanced camera that Apple does have. And it also has a 2.28 faster download speed. Of course, it has wireless charging to it, and it is lighter phone. So if you're looking for a lighter phone, not looking to have a bulkier phone, and at the point right now, of course, the iPhone SE will get a lot more updates to it. That's one of the bigger advantage of the SE versus the iPhone 7 Plus. Between that, if you're looking for a budget-friendly phone, iPhone 7 Plus, you're probably getting around the same price you get used iPhone SE. So if you're looking in the market for it because of these two phones in 2021, that's why we want to check out the link in the description. You probably can score maybe for an extra 50 to 100 bucks the iPhone SE, and the phone that's going to last you the longer, going to give you more for your bang for your buck in a kind of situation there. So there you have it. That's our review for it. We want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think about both of these devices, whether you upgraded from one to another? Leave a comment in the comment section. Thanks for watching, guys. See you guys next time.